I'm going to show you how to stop playing like a Silver Winter Soldier with 4 advanced techniques. But before we get into that, I'm going to take a one-shot energy focus chew. If you don't know what these are, it's the first link in the description below. Her nose was really red today.
Delicious.
You kind of have to chew a lot. Anyways, the first major mistake Bucky players are making is with the grapple. If you find yourself doing this, stop it. Why would this be a bad thing? Well, first of all, when you're pulling an enemy tank from the front line into your own team, you're creating a large amount of space between the enemy team and their tank. In some situations, this can be good, except when you're pulling them from the front line into your team, you're creating enough space for their team to follow in behind, and it's actually going to give them a better positioning to push into the point. Now, I'm not saying never to pull in a tank. However, you really want to be doing this when you know that you can single them out and get them far enough away from their team to secure the kill. If you're just going to be pulling in a tank to deal a little bit of damage, you're going to be creating space for the enemy team. Now, a good fundamental way to use his grapple when you're on the front line and trying to go into the enemy team is more like this. You're going to want to be pulling squishies instead of the tanks. This is obviously a lot easier said than done if the enemy team is actually playing behind their tanks. However, capitalizing on bad positioning is a big part of this game. And as an added bonus to Bucky's grapple, something that you can do that's really going to add value to your team and is at a higher skill level is shutting down ultimate abilities. As you can see here, we shut down a Strange ult and a few others just by grappling them out of it. This is incredibly valuable and can save your team from losing team fights, and is something that you definitely need to be looking out for. If a Strange hasn't popped their ult in a minute and it looks like they're trying to get more aggressive, don't use your grapple until they push in and start popping the Agamotto, because then you can just pull them out of it and they've wasted an incredibly valuable ultimate. Now, the second low skill thing that I see Winter Soldiers doing is this. Doing this early in a match when the enemy team's grouped up and nobody has ultimates on deck. Wow. Doing this in a match early when the enemy team is grouped up and nobody has ultimates on deck can be a good way to get ult charge. However, there is a sequence that you need to be following when doing this to output the most amount of damage possible. Why would we not want to be throwing Bucky's orb into a group of enemies? Well, one of the biggest reasons is if the enemy team has flyers. Now, flying heroes have been increasingly more viable throughout Season 1.5 with the addition of Human Torch. Along with that, flyers are not the easiest for Bucky to take on with his revolver, as he is not a hit scan hero. So what you want to do instead is you want to throw his orb at the flyers, and what this does is it actually pulls them back to the ground for a brief period of time. In doing this, you can stop them from hitting your healers or anybody else on your team for a brief moment, or get them into position so that you can take them out. Now, a better use for this in general, instead of just throwing your orb directly into the enemy team, is you want to be using this as a reload cancel. Now, Bucky's revolver only has 3 shots, which isn't a lot. However, he does deal a significant amount of damage, and being able to output more than 3 shots in quick succession is a huge part of his kit and something that you're going to need to learn if you want to move up the ranks. The best way that you can do this is you're going to fire your first 3 initial shots, and before your character starts the reload, you're going to throw his orb, and that is going to cancel the reload and refill his weapon, so you can follow that with an additional 3 shots. This is best used on tanks as they have the most health, and if you can get headshots in there, you can delete their health bar really quickly. And with this, in a pinch, you can use this as a finisher when heroes are at low health and trying to get back to their team. It's something that I've done numerous times to end up splitting the enemy team instead of trying to reload and hit a shot at a long distance. You can also just throw an orb and hope it hits them to finish them off. Now, we can't really make an advanced guide without going over Bucky's ultimate kill order. If you haven't heard the term before, kill order is the order that you're going to be focusing enemies and trying to kill them. With Bucky's ultimate being one of the most valuable ultimates in the game, the kill order is really important so that you don't immediately shut down your ultimate. One of the biggest mistakes that I'm seeing is Bucky's are going straight for the Namor, who ends up being one of the biggest problems in the match, without checking or making sure that they've already exhausted their bubble. If you hit a Namor and they pop into their bubble, not only did you waste your ult, but you're giving them a way better positioning to just immediately take you out with turrets. So something that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to try and force the Namor to bubble before you can ult them. And I would just recommend going for a different hero at first in general. Now, one of the biggest targets and one of the ones that you're going to want to focus on the most is the strategists. Strategists have a very hard time surviving this ultimate ability, especially if you follow up with his punch or orb or just some good headshots. It's going to be really hard for them not to die and refill your ultimate. There is a caveat with this. If the enemy strategists have not popped an ultimate ability in a while, you're not going to want to focus them. You're also not going to want to pop your ult in general, and we'll get into that in just a moment. Now, the last target on the list should definitely be the tanks and the flyers. The reason being is the tanks have a lot of health, and if the strategists are still around when you ult them, it's going to be really hard for you to get another ult charge off of them, unless your team is also laying into them and helping you focus them down. With the flyers, they can really stay out of your ultimate ability, and it's really tricky to try and hit them in the air. The best bet is that you use Bucky's 6-second ult charge time to throw an orb at them, and as they're falling to the ground, that's when you're going to trigger your ultimate again and try and hit them as they're on their descent. Also, if I catch you using Bucky's ultimate ability to bait out strategist ultimates, I'm gonna hunt you down. Don't do it. It's a huge waste. You're losing so much value. Bucky's ultimate is one of the most valuable ultimate abilities in the game, and we're probably going to see a nerf in the future because this ultimate can win you not just one team fight, but multiple team fights. The amount of time that Bucky gets to hold his ult charge for, that 6 seconds, is insane, and it's something that you can use again and again and again and again. Everybody's seen a lot of clips of people on TikTok getting 20, 25 agains from Bucky's ultimate, and the reason that they're able to do this is they're utilizing that 6-second timing, and even if you're only in one team fight, it's still a good thing to do, so you can pick the perfect timing to trigger your again and get the most value from the ult. And next, we have to know our positioning. When you're playing Bucky, it's really easy to try and frontline most of the time and deal a ton of damage, but if you're not in the right position, you're going to lose the fight. One of the things that is going to make the difference between you playing like a Silver Bucky and a Grandmaster Bucky or higher is that you are going to be protecting your strategists in the backline. This is going to be a really crucial part of playing Bucky at a higher rank, especially when enemies are running dive heroes like Spider-Man or the Tickle Monster. When they're doing this and they're diving your strategists, you're going to want to grapple them and focus them out because they don't have the support of their healers. This is going to set your team up to be going into a 6v5 on every engagement as long as you're focusing out their dive heroes. One of the other big things that Bucky needs to focus on is you need to be playing behind your tanks. If you stay behind your tanks, it's going to be a lot harder for you to get hit, and it's going to be a lot easier for you to pull enemies into your backline and focus them down with the rest of the team. If you're playing in front of your tanks, chances are you're going to get pulled out of position or make a play out of position anyways and get shut down completely by the enemy team. Being behind your tanks is going to be a crucial step in making Bucky work really well. We're going to want to focus on bad enemy positioning. One of the most important parts in this game is picking out which enemies are out of place and focusing on punishing that. If you're punishing the people who are out of place in their match throughout every match you play, you're going to win a lot more games and get considerably more value in doing so. A lot of this game is based around positioning, and if you want to play at a higher level, you definitely need to learn this. You definitely want to be like Obi-Wan Kenobi when you're playing Bucky, and this is what I mean.
I have the high ground!
Playing on the high ground with Bucky can have a lot of advantages, and it can help you hit the flying heroes a lot easier. And if you found this guide helpful, let me know in the comment section below and share your own tips for playing the Winter Soldier. Earlier we did talk about the importance of focusing on the flying heroes, but if they're still getting a lot of value and you want to make them swap heroes, make sure that you watch this next video. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with a friend who is bad at playing Duelist.